She slammed the hammer against the doorframe and shouted, so loud that the whole neighborhood turned their heads. "Call the cops! Arrest him right now!" Her face was red with rage, her voice cutting through the quiet street like a siren. Neighbors froze behind windows. Phones lifted to capture the drama, hungry for chaos. I didn't move. I stood with my house keys in one hand, calm as stone, staring at the woman who thought she ruled the entire block. She pointed at me like I was some intruder. "You don't belong here. You're violating HOA rules." Her words were sharp, dripping with arrogance. But she didn't know the truth, that this house, this land, this moment was mine. I let her rant, each scream pulling more eyes toward us. Then she lifted her phone, waving it like a weapon. "I'm calling 911. You're going to jail tonight." I felt the neighbors' judgment, their doubt, their whispers. Was I guilty or just unlucky? Within minutes, the sound of sirens filled the air. Police cruisers rolled in, fast, blue and red lights reflecting off her smile. She thought she had already won. But what she didn't know was the one fact that would flip this whole scene upside down. The police cruisers stopped right in front of my driveway, engines humming as two officers stepped out. Their hands rested near their holsters, eyes narrowing, scanning between me and the furious woman holding the hammer. She wasted no time, rushing forward, waving her arms like a director calling action. "That's him!" she shouted, pointing at me. "He broke into this neighborhood and refused to leave. Arrest him before he hurts someone!" Her words poured out fast, filled with fake fear, and the crowd seemed to buy it. Neighbors leaned out further, some recording, some whispering about how dangerous I might be. The officers looked at me, steady but uncertain. I slowly raised my keys, my voice calm. "This is my home. I live here. She's trespassing on my property." Karen laughed so loud it pierced the air. "Don't believe him. Keys mean nothing here. I run this block. I decide who stays and who goes." Her arrogance was so heavy, even the officers exchanged awkward glances, unsure what to make of her claim. Then, as tension climbed higher, another sound cut through the night, a dark SUV pulling up behind the police cars. Its engine shut off, and when the door opened, the entire street fell into silence. No one expected who would step out. The SUV door opened slowly, and a figure stepped out with calm authority. It was my wife, her dark uniform neat, her badge glinting under the streetlights. The crowd gasped, whispers rushing from one window to another. Karen froze, her hammer dropping slightly as the smile on her face cracked. My wife walked forward, each step measured, her eyes sharp on the two officers. "What's happening here?" she asked firmly, her tone carrying the weight of command. Karen stuttered, pointing at me like a child caught lying. "He's trespassing. He's breaking HOA rules. I called you to arrest him." My wife turned her gaze to me for a brief moment, then looked back at Karen. "This man lives here." "With me. He has more right to this property than anyone." The officers stiffened, recognition flashing across their faces. One muttered under his breath, "Ma'am, you're the one who trained us." The entire street erupted in hushed disbelief. Karen's face drained of color, her mouth opening but no words coming out. My wife crossed her arms slowly, her voice steady but edged with fire. "You called the wrong cops tonight." For a moment, it felt like the scene was over. But Karen wasn't finished. Her arrogance pushed her into a reckless move no one saw coming. Karen's hand trembled. But instead of backing down, she gripped the hammer tighter and waved it wildly in the air. "I don't care who she is," she screamed, pointing toward my wife. "This whole neighborhood answers to me. I'll decide what happens here." The officers stiffened, one stepping forward, hand raised. "Ma'am, put the hammer down," he ordered firmly. But Karen only grew louder, her voice cracking as neighbors gasped from behind curtains. "He's dangerous and you're all blind. If you won't arrest him, I'll do it myself." She lifted the hammer higher, aiming it toward me. My wife's expression didn't change, calm, steady, almost cold. She stepped in front of me, her voice low but cutting. "Karen, put it down, now!" For a moment, silence fell. Heavy and tense, broken only by the hum of police radios. Karen's chest heaved, her eyes darting, desperate to keep control. And then she made her worst mistake. She swung the hammer downward, not hitting me, but slamming it against the side of the doorway, splintering wood. That single act flipped everything. The officers moved instantly, closing in on her, their hands grabbing her wrists. Neighbors gasped, some even cheering quietly. Karen fought, screaming, "This is my block! You can't do this to me!" But the truth was already clear. Her power had finally cracked, and everyone knew it. The officers pinned her arms, the hammer clattering to the ground with a sharp clang. She twisted and shouted like the whole world was against her. "You can't touch me! I'm HOA president. I make the rules here." But the neighbors were no longer silent. From porches and windows came mutters. Some bold enough to yell, "We never voted for you!" Another voice shouted, "You forged those notices on our doors!" Phones lifted higher, flashes recording every second. Karen's face turned pale as the weight of exposure hit her. My wife stepped forward, her tone steady but heavy with authority. "You lied to these people. You trespassed. And you threatened with a weapon. That's not power, that's a crime." The officers nodded, one pulling out cuffs. The metallic click echoing in the night. Karen struggled, her pride collapsing with each movement. "This is a mistake. You'll regret this!" she screamed. But the crowd only grew louder, booing her arrogance. I stood still, my keys still in my hand, watching justice slowly unfold. My wife turned her eyes toward me briefly, a silent reassurance that this storm was finally breaking. But deep down, I knew Karen wasn't finished. People like her never surrender quietly. Something darker was still brewing. Just when the cuffs clicked around her wrists, Karen's voice dropped from rage to a cold, venomous whisper. She leaned toward the nearest officer and hissed, "You think this is over? I have friends in higher places than you can imagine. One phone call and your badges mean nothing." The officer hesitated for a split second, but my wife stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "Go ahead, Karen, make your call. But remember, every camera here just caught what you did. Even your so-called friends can't erase that." The crowd murmured in agreement, their phones still aimed like spotlights. Karen's face flushed red, fury mixing with fear, but then she smirked. "You don't get it. I know things. About this neighborhood, about people, secrets that would destroy them." Her words spread like poison, neighbors glancing at each other nervously. For the first time, doubt rippled through the crowd. My wife didn't flinch. She folded her arms and said sharply, "Then tonight, you've revealed who the real danger is, and it's not him, it's you." The officers tightened their grip, pulling Karen toward the patrol car as she screamed, "This isn't the end! You'll all regret crossing me!" The night air grew heavier, the neighbors whispering anxiously. Karen was leaving in cuffs, but her threats hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. The red and blue lights of the patrol car painted the houses as Karen was shoved inside, still thrashing against the cuffs. Even with the door slammed shut, her muffled voice carried through the glass. "This neighborhood belongs to me." "You'll see!" The officers exchanged uneasy glances but drove off, leaving the street in a stunned silence. Neighbors stepped out cautiously now, no longer hiding behind curtains. Some shook my hand, others thanked my wife with trembling voices. Yet beneath their relief was fear. Karen's threats had cut deep. "What did she mean by secrets?" An older man whispered. Another muttered, "She knows things." What if she wasn't bluffing? My wife stood tall, scanning the faces around her. "Don't let her words control you," she said firmly. "Fear is her last weapon." But even as she spoke, I could see the doubt in their eyes. Karen's influence had poisoned this place for too long. And now, even in chains, she still managed to twist the night into uncertainty. Later, as we closed our front door, I caught my wife staring at the street through the window, her jaw tight. "She's not finished," she said quietly. "People like Karen never go down without pulling others with them." And in that moment, I realized the real battle hadn't ended. It was just about to begin. Days passed, but the neighborhood couldn't shake Karen's shadow. Whispers of her connections spread like wildfire, fueling anxiety. Then one evening, a letter appeared in every mailbox. No signature, just a single line. "You'll regret turning on me." Panic rippled through the block. Some neighbors wanted to ignore it, others spoke of leaving. My wife gathered them all in the community park under the streetlights. "This ends tonight," she declared, her voice steady and commanding. She laid out every piece of evidence Karen had forged. Every fake notice, every abuse of power, all documented and ready for court. Phones flashed again, recording the truth this time, not fear. The crowd grew bolder, voices rising together. "We won't be bullied anymore!" For the first time, the neighborhood stood united. My wife turned to me with the faintest smile, the weight of months lifting off her shoulders. But just as relief washed over everyone, a police siren wailed in the distance. A different squad car pulled up, and an officer stepped out holding fresh paperwork. "We've uncovered more," he said gravely. "Karen wasn't just abusing HOA rules. She's tied to something much bigger." Gasps echoed through the park. My wife exchanged a sharp glance with me, her hand brushing against mine. The war with Karen wasn't over. It had only revealed a darker truth waiting in the shadows. And as the neighbors stood together, stronger than ever, I knew one thing: whatever storm was coming, we'd be ready.